Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and this is the Win Play Show, a podcast devoted to all aspects of horse racing and handicapping that is proudly part of the Amalfi Media Network. Today, we're going to preview the biggest card of 2022 to date, which is the Pegasus World Cup, and that will feature seven graded stakes races taking place at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. Of course, the card is highlighted by the two Grade 1 races, the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational and the Pegasus World Cup. That will feature the showdown between Breeders' Cup Classic Champion Knicks and Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile Champion Life is Good. Now, before we get to all that, just a quick reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice. And of course, subscribe to the Win Play Show on YouTube. We appreciate all those new followers and subscribers. We really appreciate all of the support and the feedback. And that's a big part of what makes this a successful show. And I love to interact with the fans and hear your opinions as well. Now, just to let you know, in case you're new to the show, we have a lot of horse racing content, from race recaps on Mondays to weekly horse racing news episodes on Wednesdays, these Friday race previews, as well as industry interviews and more. And aside from today's preview, visit amalfimedia.com to get my win, place, and show selections for the entire Saturday card at Gulfstream Park. And you're going to want to do that because Stable Duel this weekend is having their biggest contest ever on Saturday, $40,000 contest. That's right. $40,000 to play Stable Duel. It's a lot of fun. Pick the 10 best horses from Gulfstream's card on Saturday. It only costs $50 to buy into the contest. Winner will get $15,000. But you know something, the great part about Stable Duel is even if you don't win, there's still a lot of cash prizes. So typically around the top 50 or so will still double their initial entry cost. So enter for 50, win 100. You don't even have to be in the top 20 or top 30 to do well. You can still make a little bit of money, even if you're, like I said, in the top 50. So a lot of fun. And listen, amalfimedia.com has you covered. Like I said, the picks and analysis is a good place to start as you build that winning stable. Now, finally, make sure to interact with us on Twitter at the handle @FailToMenace or on YouTube, and let me know how you think Pegasus World Cup and the races at Gulfstream Park are going to play out this weekend. And of course, share with your fellow horse racing fanatics on social media. Okay, well, we have a slammed, jam-packed, full of racing today. 7 stakes races we're going to run through. We're going to be efficient. I'm going to try not to be too verbose in how I break these down. I'm going to try to be pretty succinct, but we need to dive in. And like I said, we will cover all 7 graded stakes races on the card, starting with race 5, which has a post time of 1:27 p.m. That's right. You got to wake up early. My West Coast friends, my international friends, you got to wake up early or stay up late if you're over in England to get this card, because post time for race 1 is well before noon at 11 a.m. Eastern. So race 5, though, kicks off the graded stakes schedule, 1:27 p.m., mile and a half. You don't see a lot of those. Mile and a half on turf. The La Prevoyante Stakes, which is a grade 3 for 4 years old and up for fillies. Let's take a look at that race, and let's take a look at that field for the La Prevoyante. And what we see is a 9-horse field. In post position 1, you have the horse Sorrel, trained by Christophe Clement and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Then Sister O'Toole, trained by Graham Motion and jockeyed by Luis Saez. Onyx, trained by Juan Alvarado and jockeyed by Rafael Manuel Hernandez. And then you have the morning line favorite, Always Shopping, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione. Nicino, trained by Edward Vaughn and jockeyed by Kent DeSormo, who's coming out from the West Coast to ride in Florida for the day. Beautiful Lover, the second favorite, another Christophe Clement horse, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Scarabia, Jack Sisterson horse, jockeyed by, Jose Ortiz. Hungry Kitten, Shug McGahee trained, Javier Castellano ridden. And finally, Honor Hop, a Brian Lynch horse, jockeyed by Julian Leparoux. So let's talk a little bit about this field for the La Prevoyante And, this is one where I think sometimes you don't usually see mile and a half races. And a lot of times at a mile and a half and at this distance, these do tend to be favorite heavy races. That they're the cream tends to rise to the top a little bit. You just don't have maybe quite as much competition in some of these races. Certainly not the breadth of competition. A lot of these same horses run against each other again and again because you just don't see a lot of races for what in America would be considered long distance running. I mean, mile and 3/8, mile and a half, mile and 5/8. These horses all regularly run that distance. There's a pretty limited number of horses that do that. But let's start with the favorite, Always Shopping. And this is a horse that, is understandably the favorite. This is the defending champion of this race, won last year's edition of this race by 3 lengths. And really loves the course, is 4 for 6 at Gulfstream Park, 2 for 3 at this distance in terms of hitting the board, only 1 win at this distance. But like I said, 4 for 6 winning at Gulfstream Park. So certainly likes the turf there at Gulfstream. Interestingly enough, this is a horse that has gone up against Beautiful Lover, who's the second favorite before, has gotten the better of Beautiful Lover twice, but has recently was bested by Beautiful Lover 2 races ago at this distance of a mile and a half. Now that was at Belmont, a non-graded stakes race, but still that was a race that really you didn't see a great effort there, finished 6th, but certainly this is a horse that does have a lot of class, and at this distance, is understandably the morning line favorite. The interesting part about this race, and I think this is something that worth noting, is that nobody really wants the lead in this race. There's not a horse that has a tendency to go out up front, and so a horse like Always Shopping, who tends to like to sit second or third, may very well find themselves on the lead. Now, I don't know how that's going to necessarily work. You look at a horse like Honor Hop, possibly getting onto the lead as well. Onyx, another horse who's a little bit of a long shot, might be pretty close, might push the pace. So it's going to be interesting to see who really wants to take the early lead and set the pace. Now, because of the lack of pace and the lack of early speed, that could really hurt your deep closers, of which we'll talk about a couple. But there are some horses that, if there's not that pace to run into, might really struggle, because if a horse like Always Shopping finds themselves on the lead, they could really rein it in and really slow the pace down a little bit and make sure they have plenty left for home, kicking for that last furlong or so. So Always Shopping, certainly, like I said, the combination of being, very strong at Gulfstream, being very strong at this distance, running at this class, running a lot of grade 3s, grade 1s, grade 2s. I mean, this is a very battle-tested horses, a lot of graded stakes races. There's a lot to like there. Now, I will say Beautiful Lover, this is the second favorite. This is a horse I do really like quite a bit. The horse should be very close to the lead, should be kind of stalking behind Always Shopping, Honor Hop, and Onyx, so will not be very far off that pace, and the lack of a pace means it'll probably be even closer than maybe normal. This is a horse that does have nice closing speed, and the fact that it'll stay close to the pace up front gives me a lot of confidence, because while this pace may not benefit deep closers, sitting in a stalking position should be pretty ideal, and you're not going to have that many lengths to make up. You might only be 2 or 3 lengths off the lead sitting 4th, and I think that's where you're probably going to find Beautiful Lover. So I do like that. Strong bullet workout on the turf last time out in terms of the last workout. Like I said, beat Always Shopping at this distance the last time they raced at a mile and a half, and that was up at Belmont in November, so not all that long ago. So something to consider. Now, a horse that I do like quite a bit is the horse Hungry Kitten. This is a horse that's 8-1, and the problem with Hungry Kitten is this is a horse that just is totally disinterested in running early in a race and will sit really far back. And in this particular, field with this particular pace, that might not be a great thing. There are a couple things working in Hungry Kitten's advantage. One is this is not a huge field. Sometimes when you're talking about 11, 12 horse fields, you can really get shuffled back pretty far. This is a 9-horse field. He'll inevitably be in the back, but or she'll inevitably be in the back, but should not be too far. And so this horse has great closing speed. And if it can just stay somewhat engaged early on, stay within maybe 8 to 10 lengths of the lead, then I think Hungry Kitten's got a real chance to put something together that's pretty strong. At 8-1, I like those odds. The other thing is, the trainer for Hungry Kitten is Shug McGahee. One of the things that people will always note about Shug McGahee is his horses rarely run well the first time out of a layoff. And so Hungry Kitten's actually running, this is a third race out of a layoff. Shug's horses tend to run themselves into shape a little bit, run themselves into form. And so I actually like the fact this horse has done well, but not great the first 2 times back since the layoff. And so I think you still might see maybe the best version of this horse in this particular race. So Hungry Kitten, one of those horses at 8-1, gives you a little bit of value to play with in your deeper exotics. So I do like Hungry Kitten quite a bit in this case. Honor Hop, I mentioned earlier, might be part of the early pace. This is a horse that's stepping up in class, has gotten very mixed results at this distance. And so I have a feeling this is a horse that will probably be a factor early in terms of you're going to see this horse probably pretty close to the front early, but I can't see this horse holding on and doing well late. Like I said, very mixed results, particularly when stepping up in class. And so this is a pretty nice field for a grade 3 for this distance on turf. So just something to keep in mind. I will say, if you're looking for a horse that's giving you really big odds, Onyx is an interesting horse to keep in mind because the pace is not going to be breakneck, and Onyx should be on or around the early lead. This is a horse that's morning line 30-1. Will probably get bet down, but may not actually. May stay at that pretty high 30-1, maybe even go up. I'd imagine it will get bet down to like 20-1, but we'll see. The reason I kind of like this horse is this horse ran 4th behind Always Shopping and Beautiful Lover last time out. So this was a horse that proved not to be that much worse than the 2 favorites in this race. So, I think actually stretching out another half furlong over that last effort isn't going to be a deal breaker. The last time out, that was a huge step up in distance for Onyx. Well, now we know the horse can run 1 mile and 3/8. Now stepping up to 1.5 miles, it's not that much of an additional step up at 30-1. Like I said, if you want to include that horse in the bottom half of an exotic, I think it could add a lot of value to some of those vertical wagers. Final horse I'll talk about here is Sister O'Toole. This is a horse I really liked at Woodbine, actually, at the Maple Leaf Stakes a couple months back, and finished second in that race. Ran really well, I thought. It's a horse that's a late kicker, though, but has not done the distance and is okay on turf, but not great on turf, and has lost to Always Shopper before, last time on the turf, actually. Additionally, this is a horse at 10-1 that just ran last weekend. I'm not one who loves those quick turnarounds. Some horses are better at doing it than others. You typically see that on the complete other end of the spectrum with sprint horses having very quick turnarounds. Sister O'Toole turning around and going a really long distance, not an ideal situation. So that's a horse at 10-1. Those are horses sometimes that can give you good value in terms of, that 10-1 morning line. I actually think that's a horse really to avoid in some of your exotics. So how do I see the La Prevoyante Stakes playing out? Well, I have Beautiful Lover to win. I think this horse is going to sit close enough and have enough of a kick at the end. I like this horse at 1.5 miles. So I think Beautiful Lover, you're going to get a little bit of value there. Second favorite at 7-2. Like that horse. I have Always Shopper to place. It's just, I think, too classy of a horse to fall very far. And then I do have Hungry Kitten coming in at 8-1 morning line to show. So that's the way I see the La Prevoyante playing out. So let's skip to race 7 and go to the W.L. McKnight Stakes, which is a grade 3 race, which is kind of the brother, if you will, to this race because it is also 1.5 miles on turf, and this is for the males. And let's take a look at the field for the grade 3 W.L. McKnight Stakes. So this is a 12-horse field in post position 1. You have the horse Temple, trained by Mike Maker and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli, also coming out from the West Coast this weekend. And then Oriental Trigger, trained by Armador Sanchez and jockeyed by Hector Isaac Berrios. Farmington Road, trained by George Arnold II and jockeyed by Emisile Jaramillo. Then Media Blitz, another Mike Maker horse, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. King Cause, the third of 4 Mike Maker horses, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Bama Breeze, George Arnold II trained, Corey Lannery ridden. Mandate, Yvonne Bellasseur trained, and Emma Jane Wilson will be on the mount. Baker's Bay, Shug McGahee horse, jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. Glenn County, the fourth of 4 Mike Maker horses, jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione. Aban, the morning line favorite, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Luis Saez. In Effect, trained by Jack Sisterson and jockeyed by Raylu Gutierrez. And then finally, Sole Volante, trained by Patrick Bianconi and jockeyed by Julian Leparoux. So let's talk a little bit about this 12-horse field. This is kind of the opposite, or the mirror image, if you will, of that previous race. Like I said, this is for the boys, 1.5 miles on turf, so same distance, same surface. But you're going to see a really hot pace here. I think there's a lot of horses that like to get out for the lead. I think you're going to see a horse like King Cause, Oriental Tiger, Temple, and even Aban, the morning line favorite at 2-1, all push for the lead. Aban's, of course, breaking from the pretty far outside in that 10 post position. That could end up being a factor. We'll see if Aban wants to get to the lead, use some of that tactical speed early on. So with that said, this is a race that I feel like opens up nicely for some deeper closers, and I think that's where you may want to look for some value here. But let's start off talking about the favorite. Aban is a horse continuing to show improvement, won at 2 miles last time out. So very strong effort there, was really kind of no doubt about it. 3 out of 4 winning the last 4 efforts. This is a horse that started its career on dirt, switched to turf. Since switching to turf has been really strong and has been done well going this distance, or going even longer, obviously, like I said, at 2 miles. The question here is the possibility that pace might not be great, though. If this horse gets pushed a little too much early, if there's a little too much pressure either put on, or this horse is chasing a little too much speed up front, if somebody else gets out there up front, if a horse like King Cause or Oriental Tiger or Temple decide to get out there up front, does Aban, chase a little too much, exert a little too much energy, or exert that energy to get to the lead? So I think there's some pace questions there with Aban that might make the horse a little bit more vulnerable than normally. One of the horses that I am fading a little bit is Glenn County at 3-1. I don't mind this horse. This horse I actually like quite a bit. But this horse always seems to come up short, always seems to disappoint. If you look, this horse doesn't even lose necessarily to the best competition. So lost to 2 Emmys last time out. That's a horse that went on to finish 3rd last weekend at Fairgrounds. It was the morning line favorite and post-time favorite and kind of finished 3rd. So underperformed a little bit and so ran behind 2 Emmys and has done that consistently when faced against 2 Emmys in the past. So Glenn County's a horse that, like I said, is around the board usually, runs decently, but at 3-1, I just don't like those odds on this particular horse. Like I said, it's a horse that I think should always be running a little bit better than it does. Just like I said, breaking from that 9 post position will be a little bit of a closer here. So that part of the race sets up well. But, the last few times out, 9th, 3rd, 5th, that was at a grade 3, a grade 2, and 2 grade 1s. So, particularly that last effort out at the Sycamore, 9th place by 15 lengths. Horse has had quite a long layoff since then, about 3-month layoff. So we'll see. I mean, obviously Mike Maker coming back off that layoff. We'll see. Wins at about a 16% rate coming off that. The workouts certainly look good, but stretching out to this distance after that long of a layoff, I think there are some legit question marks. Another 3rd favorite in this race, Temple. This is an interesting horse. Ran 2nd in this race last year to Tide of the Sea. It's a very nice horse. Has been running shorter recently. It's been running kind of 1.25 miles, so stepping back up to this 1.5 mile distance. One thing I'll say about Temple is this is a very consistent horse. It's a horse that's always around the board, and lots of 3rds, lots of 2nds, lots of a few wins, but is always around. And I think that's a good thing to see out of this horse. This is also a horse, it's interesting. If you look at the Timeform US pace figures, this is a horse that is almost as fast early as it is late. So this is just a horse that's very consistent. You typically don't see that. You see horses that have either really good early speed and lesser late speed, or vice versa. This is a horse that runs a 92 early and a 90 late. So it's a very consistent horse, a horse that I definitely like to hit the board, and I would build, not necessarily build tickets around, but I would make sure this is a horse that's on your tickets for those more deep exotic wagers. I think a couple of horses I'll just mention. King Cause is a horse that I mentioned early that might be on the lead. That's a horse that is no experience over a mile and an eighth and is likely going to push the pace, be a little bit of a rabbit. It's interesting. Baker's Bay, this is a horse, we talked about Shug McGahee in the previous race as a horse, had a few races under its belt and, might run pretty well in Hungry Kitten. Baker's Bay is kind of the other end of the spectrum. This is a Shug horse that's actually coming off a layoff. At 12-1, I'm just skeptical we're going to see that horse's best effort. I do like Baker's Bay. I think maybe second, third race, look for that horse to do really well and maybe outrun its odds. But I think first race off a layoff, Shug McGahee horses typically are not going to show their best effort. But I will give you one horse that I really do like at 12-1, some double-digit odds. And this is a horse that I think might just crash the party, and that is Bama Breeze. This is a 12-1 horse. Really like this horse. This is a horse that is really the strongest closer in the field. And this is a pace, like I said, that could be a little hot up front. I think you might see some horses fatigue late. Bama Breeze is that horse that's going to hang back and it's got a great kick at the end. Like I said, is really the best deep closer in this entire field, has the best late speed in terms of pace figures, has beaten Glenn County before. So, has beaten the horse that's the second favorite in this race. It's coming off a 3-month layoff. So there's a little bit of a question mark there. That said, George Arnold II, the trainer, 24% winner in those instances. So you have a trainer who seems to be very experienced with winning off the layoff. You have a horse that's running style sets up perfectly for this particular race. I think Bama Breeze gives you a lot of options and gives you a lot of value in this particular race. Those are the main figures that I see playing out in this race. So the way I see the WL McKnight Stakes playing out is I'm going to give you a little bit of a long shot up top. I have Bama Breeze at 12-1 to win. I have Aban to place. I think, again, very classy horse. That horse is not going to fade very far. So I have Aban to place, and I have Temple to show. I think that's a very consistent horse. I like Temple a lot. And so Glenn County's the kind of favorite that I'm getting out of those exotics. I just don't necessarily think that horse is going to answer the bell. But I do like Bama Breeze to come up and give you a lot of value there as a win. All right, well, let's move to the 8th race on the card, which is the Inside Information Stakes. And I don't have any inside information, but we're going to cap this one anyway. And this is 7 furlongs on dirt for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. And this is a 10-horse field in post position 1, Family Time, trained by Dale Romans, jockeyed by Corey Lannery. AG Indy, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Louis Saez. Dance Doro, trained by Ralph Nix and jockeyed by Emachal Jaramillo. And then Mon Petit Chou, trained by Fernando Abreu and jockeyed by Javier Castellano. Four Graces, trained by Ian Wilkes and jockeyed by Julian Leperoux. Pacific Gale, who is going to likely be running her final race, trained by John Kimmel and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. Jakarta, trained by Michael Trombetta and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Just One Time, who is the morning line favorite, who is the Brad Cox horse, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then Crumbun in the 9-hole, trained by Jorge Delgado and jockeyed by Chantel Sutherland. And then finally Starship Nala, trained by Stephen Doeskin and jockeyed by Paco Lopez. So let's talk a little bit about this field. And this is a tough one to cap, I think. The Inside Information Stakes, it's a grade 2 race. This is one where not a lot of horses pop off the page. And it's also one where there's a lot of question marks, I think, about every single horse in this field. So I think you could talk yourself into a lot of horses. I think you might be able to talk yourself into a pretty big price in some instances, or talk yourself into a favorite. But let's start with the favorite Just One Time. This is a new horse to the Brad Cox stable, was just recently claimed. This is a horse that is really stepping up in class. This is a horse that was running at Penn National most recently. Now, I grew up going to Penn National, all the time as a kid. I enjoyed going to Penn National. It's a fun track. Growing up in southeastern Pennsylvania, it was the one I like to go to the most. But still, going to from Penn National to a graded stakes race at Gulfstream is quite the jump. And if you look at Just One Time before, this is a pretty big step up in class. This was running a $100,000 stakes race, but before that was running $28,000 allowance races, and is coming off about a 3-month layoff. That said, Brad Cox must really love this horse, because for him to take this horse and put this horse into a graded stakes race right off the bat really shows something. Shows certainly a lot of support from the trainer. This is a horse that's stretching out a little bit in terms of distance, but is a winner. I mean, this is a horse that wins with class and has won easily at Penn National. So it's just kind of blown away the competition at the slightly lower level, has handled synthetic, has handled dirt. So this horse seems to be very versatile. So that said, I just worry about a horse stepping up in class this much, stepping into a whole new circuit of horses in this first time out. Then you look at a horse like Jakarta. This is a horse that really looked like its best days were behind it, and then runs a huge race last time out at Parks, actually in southeastern Pennsylvania outside of Philly, and for Mike Trombetta. Now you have Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. You got to take this horse seriously. This horse may sit behind the pace, and there might be a pretty decent pace in this particular race. So, this is a horse, again, that could benefit by sitting behind some pace up front, because you're going to have Just One Time, who likes to go to the lead. You have AG Indy, who we're going to talk about in a second. You also have Four Graces. All of those horses might be on or near that early lead. Jakarta could sit, second or, fourth essentially behind that and have a pretty nice trip, and then make a run at the end. We'll see. I think that's the other reason I'm a little skeptical about Just One Time. It's one thing to step up in class. You're now stepping up in class and you're potentially going to the lead against this caliber of horse. I think there might be some questions there. Now, I mentioned AG Indy before. This is a turf horse that is making its second only appearance on dirt. The first time did not go particularly well. That was very early on in the horse's career. This is a nice turf horse that was just recently claimed by Todd Pletcher. And there are few trainers I trust more than Todd Pletcher, and getting this horse ready for distance, which he's stretching this horse out. This horse was running 5.5, 6 furlong sprints on turf. Now we're running 7 furlongs on dirt. Should be on or near the lead. Could push Just One Time a little bit. Could lead to a little bit of a speed duel. I think for all of those reasons and the transition to dirt, I just don't love this horse. 6-1, you're getting a little bit of value. I wouldn't be surprised if this horse gets bet down, though, just because of those connections that I mentioned with Pletcher. And, the horse has worked out very well on dirt, but like I said, still some question marks there. Then you have Dance Doro. This is a horse that's cutting back in distance, actually, and stepping up in class. Interestingly enough, though, if you look at this horse has a running style where this horse usually is on the lead at the 7 furlong mark. So this is not a horse that needs that extra furlong to, get that final kick, to, really run down its opponents, to get that final win. This is a horse that can do well on the lead, near the lead, and can make a move early enough where I don't think cutting back from a mile to 7 furlongs is going to be that big of a deal. This is a horse that's been running those 1-turn miles at Gulfstream, so is not going from 2 turns to 1 turn or something like that. So, not a huge transition. Here's the other thing I like about Dance Doro. Likes Gulfstream Park. 4 for 9 winning at Gulfstream Park. This is a horse that likes the track, has run in good races at Gulfstream Park and won those races. So this is a horse, like I said, cutting back in distance, I like a little bit, and I think you're getting a little bit of value with Dance Doro at 6-1. Pacific Gale, I mentioned this is a horse running its final race, has hit the board in over half of its career races, 18 times hitting the board out of 34 races. That said, the recent efforts have not been great, has not run since October. The workouts look good. Pacific Gale at 8-1, I mean, gives you a little bit of value, but I just have a hard time thinking this horse is going to close out its career, winning. And this is not necessarily the easiest spot because while I'm not thrilled with any of these horses, this is still, they're all even. And Pacific Gale, like I said, is one of those horses run very well in the past, but has been declining a little bit in recent years. And like I said, is moving on to retirement after this race. So, clearly this is a horse with some diminishing returns of late. So the horse that I really like is Four Graces. And this is a horse that had a phenomenal 2020 and then had a series of layoffs. Only ran once in 2021, came back though, ran in 2022 already, and really ran a hard-charging second in a warm-up race to Longshot Starship Nala. But I thought that was a great effort in terms of just knocking the rust off, getting back out there. The fact this horse turns back around in about 3 weeks to run this race really shows that this is a horse that is very capable and that clearly the trainer sees a lot to like there. Leparoux, the jockey, I tend to like at Gulfstream a little bit. So I think there's a lot of things to like here. Here's the other thing to like. 4 out of 6 winning at this distance. This is a proven horse. So in a race where there's a lot of question marks, I just think Four Graces is the best horse in the field. And maybe you go, well, I don't like all the layoffs and the injuries and all of that. And I understand that if that kind of maybe makes your feet a little cold, but I think there's a lot to like with this horse. So how do I see the inside information stakes playing out? Well, I have Four Graces to win. I have Jakarta to place, and I have Dance Doro to show. All right. So now let's move on to the 9th race on the card, which is the Pegasus Filly and Mare Stakes, which is a grade 3 race for 4-year-olds and up. And let's take a look at that field. And this is an 11-horse field. Post position 1, Sweet Melania, trained by Todd Pletcher, jockeyed by Luis Saez. Then Wakanaka, fun name to pronounce, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Lady Spatespear, trained by Roger Atfield and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. Regal Glory, the Chad Brown horse and morning line favorite, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Gift List, British horse, trained by Brian Lynch and jockeyed by Julian Leparoux. Then you have Alms, trained by Michael Stidham and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Nicest, an Irish horse, trained by Mike McCarthy and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione. Summer in Saratoga, a Joe Sharp horse, jockeyed by Corey Lannery. Shifty She, Safi Joseph Jr., trained, and Edwin Gonzalez ridden. In a Hurry, Shug McGahee, trained, and Javier Castellanos, the jockey. And then finally, Bipartisanship, a British horse, trained by Graham Motion and jockeyed by Paco Lopez. So this is another interesting one. Another race with potentially a very fast pace up front. Shifty She is going to go to the front because that's what Shifty She does. The question is who comes next. Regal Glory last time out ran on the lead. That was a race that didn't really have a lot of pace, kind of like the first race we talked about, actually, the La Prevoyante. Didn't have, that similar sort of situation where there just wasn't any pace. Regal Glory went to the lead. Regal Glory naturally is more of a stalking horse. So I would imagine that horse will revert back to that form. I don't think this is a new trend that Chad Brown wants this horse on the lead. The horse that I think is going to push Shifty She is Lady Spatespear. I think a horse like In a Hurry is going to want to be forwardly placed. I think Sweet Melania coming off the rail is going to want to be forwardly placed as well. I think all of those horses are going to be on or near the lead, may push Shifty She quite a bit from a speed standpoint. So those are all horses to consider, and I think that's essentially just going to make this a little bit of a hotter pace. Now, let's just talk about the horses, though. Regal Glory, I think, is the appropriate favorite in this race. Getting class relief, essentially, has run 3 grade 1s in the last 4 races and has comported himself very well. Has two firsts, a second, and a fourth in those 4 races. So she's a very classy filly and should sit behind that pace. And I think that really sets up quite well for Regal Glory in that regard. And so this is one where the race and the favorite really do, I think, blend pretty nicely. So I think this is again, a race that sets up perfectly for the favorite. And I know sometimes people don't like that, but there's some races on this card where I think you can find some value. We talked about a couple of those already, but I think this is one where it's tough to get past the favorite in this particular race. I really like Regal Glory a lot. But I will just talk briefly about some of the other horses. Lady Spear, this is a horse I really loved at the Best Arabian and ended up winning that race, but finished third last time out at Gulfstream. This is interesting. I've been paying attention to this. There are a lot of horses at Woodbine up in Canada that have come down to Gulfstream for the winter. It hasn't worked out that great. A lot of those Woodbine horses, especially the top flight Woodbine horses, they've been hitting the board, but they've not been winning like they have been up at Woodbine. So I think there's maybe a little bit of question about just the caliber of competition up at Woodbine compared to down at Gulfstream. So something to keep in mind. I think distance is also an issue for Lady Spear at this length. So that's a question mark. Workouts have not been particularly crisp since that third place finish. I think we're running 103.5 furlongs. So, there are some question marks there, I think, in terms of speed. And this is only the second time on turf. Last time out, like I said, third place. Maybe you're going to see a little bit of improvement, but typically you see that perk up the first time out. And I also think this horse might get a little burnt out by Shifty She. So I think the combination of forwardly placed, speed, stretching out in distance doesn't really play well for Lady Spear. Nicest is a horse that is actually shortening up a bit. I actually think that's a problem. I think this horse likes a lot more distance and is shortening up to 1 mile and a 16th. I don't think that's a good combination. This is a horse I have a feeling people a lot of times will talk about the gallop out, that, a horse might win a race, but then, looks exhausted that next, right after it crosses the finish line, whereas some horse that's come charging down the stretch ends up just blowing past everyone and galloping out well past all the other horses. I could see Nicest making a lot of people excited about the gallop out. But I think Nicest is a horse that will make that charge. But I just think the combination of shortening up distance and speed, I just don't know if it really sets up well for Nicest. So it's a horse I'm a little skeptical about. So one of the horses that I think will add a little bit of value is Summer in Saratoga. This is a horse that we talked about last week on the podcast, actually, because it was supposed to run at Fairgrounds, but was scratched, moved into this spot. So that, I think, tells you a little bit. This is a horse that might have been a little bit of a slam dunk last week in a non-graded stakes race, but clearly is chasing a little bit of purse money coming over here to a grade 3. This is a slightly tougher spot, but I think the horse looks pretty good and is a nice play underneath for the value. And I think this is, again, Summer in Saratoga. You're looking at a horse that, is going off at 12-1, at morning line. We'll see what it goes off at post time, but I like those odds for this horse. This is a horse that's 3 for 6 winning at this distance. All of those wins are at stakes races, granted not graded stakes, but stakes races, and has won a grade 3 at a longer distance, actually. So it's a horse that has a lot of class. I think Summer at Saratoga, 12-1 is a little bit of an overlay. I think this is a good bet. Bipartisanship and Alms are two horses that are interesting, 20-1 both cases. They're kind of horses going in different directions. Alm had a little bit of a disappointing effort last time out. Bipartisanship actually is looking to improve a little bit and has shown the ability to kind of continue to step up. If you're going to take a shot with one of them, I would actually tell you to take a shot with Bipartisanship. I think that's a horse that is on the upward trajectory. I really like a little bit. I think you could make an argument. Alms just had a rough trip last time out. Maybe the pace sets up better, but I think Bipartisanship's a horse on the rise. But like I said, maybe very deep exotics, those Superfectas, Quinellas, look for Bipartisanship there. You have Sweet Melania. This is a horse I really like a lot. Drew the inside rail. Saw a big jump in the buyer's figures last time out. And that was a little bit of an anomaly, not only in terms of the buyer speed figure, but this is a horse that usually does not win. This is a horse that usually is always around the board. It's just sitting there, second, third, fourth. It's always around the situation. Will be breaking from that inside rail and will probably get pushed on or near the lead because of that. Again, just worried about what pace could end up doing to Sweet Melania, and not sure she's going to get quite the perfect trip she got last time out. So there are some questions there. And the other question is, if she doesn't use up that early speed to get on the lead and potentially be part of that hot pace, she could really get shuffled back from that inside post. And when she does get shuffled back, she does not do well traditionally. So this is a horse that doesn't really make up a lot of ground late. Like I said, last time out was a little bit of an anomaly. It's usually a horse that kind of stays around where it's placed early on. So interesting to see where Sweet Melania will end up getting out. And post position obviously will have a big impact on that. Wakanaka, I'll just very briefly mention, this is a really nice horse that's making its North American debut, but we talked about it a couple times before. Janelle Monáe last week at Fairgrounds, the Brad Cox horse. I like to see at least a start before I start betting on horses making North American debuts. This is a horse coming off a 8 month layoff, hasn't run since April. Bill Mott's good, a great trainer, but like I said, this is a pretty tough spot, I think, for Wakanaka. I'd like to see one effort before I start putting this horse to win or on the board. So I'm eager to see what this horse does next time out, but we'll see. So how do I see the Filly and Mare Stakes playing out? Well, I have Regal Glory to win. I think this is one where you got to take your medicine. I like the favorite up top. I do have Summer and Saratoga to place. I think that's where you're going to find a little bit of value. And I like Shifty She to show. We didn't talk much about Shifty She, but Shifty She is one of my favorite horses. This is a horse that gets in the lead and doesn't get worn out, even with a hot pace. This is a horse that can, even when it gets passed, and I think it will get passed here, she really digs in. And I like the grit that this horse has, even with a hot pace up front. So I really like Shifty She quite a bit. And I just think Regal Glory, Summer, and Saratoga, I think the race sets up nicely for the two of them. But Shifty She, you got to include her on the board, I think. All right. Well, let's move to race 10, which is the Fred W. Hopper Grade 3 Stakes. And this is for 4 years old and up on dirt. And let's take a look at the field for this race. And this is a 9-horse field. Coming in at post position 1, you have Fearless, trained by Todd Pletcher, jockeyed by Luis Saez. Pain, trained by Chow Caramori and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Bon Razon, Jack Sisterson horse, jockeyed by Raylu Gutierrez. Officiating, Safi Joseph Jr., trained, Tyler Gaffleone ridden. Chivalry, trained by Ralph Nix and jockeyed by Javier Castellano. Liam, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Dennis's Moment, trained by Dale Romans and jockeyed by Corey Lannery. Speaker's Corner, who is the among the morning line favorites, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. And then finally, Girolamo's Attack, who is trained by Safi Joseph Jr. and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. All right. Well, like I said, Speaker's Corner is the favorite. Fearless is the second favorite. Speaker's Corner is going off 2-1. Fearless at 5-2. And this is an interesting race. And this is another one, like the last race, I think it's hard to get past the favorites here. I think these two races back-to-back really set up nicely. Speaker's Corner, let's just start there. This horse has speed. It's coming off a little bit of a layoff. This horse is the class of the field, though. I really like Speaker's Corner quite a bit here. So this is a horse I just think that is... has run just so well previously. And like I said, just really classy horse. And so I think Speaker's Corner up top is just, where you're going to want to go. Was outdone at the Pennsylvania Derby, was really over its head. This is a grade 3. This is not necessarily a grade 1 horse. This is more of a grade 3 horse. Still lost to Miles D, who's a really nice horse that ran the Travers last time out and actually hit the board at the Travers, finished third behind Midnight Bourbon and Essential Quality. So, lost to a very classy horse last time. Distance should be perfect. And here's the thing. 1 turn mile, sign me up for Speaker's Corner. Coming off a layoff of this length, Mott is excellent, winning 24%. So I like the combination of this horse has the best speed in the field. This horse has a lot of class compared to the other horses. This is a horse that's actually has run up against better and is now kind of stepping back to where it's more traditionally going to do well and win. I think the distance is perfect in terms of that 1 turn mile. Love the connections. Now let's talk about where you might still find value, though. So Girolamo's Attack. This is where I'm going to the far outside. This is a horse that's maybe a little bit of a horse for a course, maybe a little bit of a horse for a distance. This is a horse that is 3 for 3 winning 1 turn miles. Okay. Beat Fearless, the 5-2 favorite last time out. This is a horse that's going off a 12-1 morning line. I don't think you're going to get that value by the post time, but this is a horse that I feel is significantly undervalued in this particular race. And like I said, it has done very well at Gulfstream Park and has done very well running at this distance. So I think, this is one where I just really like the combination of factors and a 12-1, the outside post position. I think all those things really line up nicely for Girolamo's attack. So horse, like I said, I just really like underneath in this particular case. Didn't have a great effort last time out, but if you notice, 1.125 miles. Go back to that mile. Listen, you're 3 for 3 winning. You look at Gulfstream career record, 7-9 hitting the board with 4 wins. Can't beat that. Saffie Joseph Jr., 25% winner this meet at Gulfstream Park. So, Saffie's got those horses down there. Sometimes I don't always trust Saffie outside of the state of Florida, but as long as you're in the state of Florida, I do tend to trust Saffie Joseph Jr. quite a bit here. So, that's where I can see a little bit of value in this particular trifecta. Fearless, the 5-2 second favorite. Again, very consistent horse, very classy at this level. There's nothing not to like about this horse. The inside rail's a little bit of a question mark, but this horse has a lot of tactical speed. And this is another horse we talked about, a horse earlier like this in Temple. This is another horse that very little gap between early and late speed. So, again, consistent horse in terms of finishing and a consistent horse in terms of speed and place throughout the race. So I do like Fearless quite a bit. I just think Speaker's Corner is a tough one to get past. Payne and Bon Raison, I think there are some serious class questions there in terms of stepping up. It's interesting. Dennis's Moment, this is a horse that some people really like, I know. I think Dennis's Moment, this is a horse that tends to fall to pieces at a mile or longer, though. I just think this horse is distance compromised. 9-2, that's too short of a price. I just don't like it. Officiating, same sort of thing. I like the horse, just not at the mile distance. I think a mile and longer, this horse, again, falls to pieces. You put this horse 6-7 furlongs, much better. Same thing with Dennis's Moment. So that said, Dennis Moment ran very well last time out. Maybe the step up in distance won't be an issue, but I'm kind of avoiding those two. Liam's another horse. I'm very high on this horse, betting on the upside, very lightly raced, but taking a really big step up in class, going from a $25,000 optional claimer to a grade 3. So really stepping up in class significantly here. And so, that said, that was after that, the last optional claimer was the first race after a long layoff. So just getting its feet wet. Can't argue with the connections. Todd Pletcher, Irad Ortiz Jr. I mean, you got to take this horse seriously. Drawing inside of Speaker's Corner probably didn't help. This is a horse that does like to get on the lead. I think Speaker's Corner, though, is going to beat this horse to the lead ultimately, and is it going to be able to clear? So, I think there's some issues there. But I think if you're looking for a little bit of value, if you want to fade maybe Fearless from your top 3, I think Liam's a horse that could sneak into that top 3 pretty easily. Ultimately, how do I see the Fred W. Hopper Stakes playing out, though? I have Speaker's Corner to win. I do like Girolamo's attack to place. I think that's where you're going to find some value. And I do have Fearless to show. But like I said, if you want to try to get a little bit more value in a trifecta, go with a horse like Liam. I can understand that. That's not a bad play. All right, well, let's get to the grade 1s. And let's get to the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational grade 1 for 4-year-olds and up on the turf. And we got quite the field for you here. This is another 12-horse field starting on post position 1. This is Space Traveler, trained by Brendan Walsh and jockeyed by Jamie Spencer. Atone, trained by Mike Maker, who has 4 horses in this one again, jockeyed by Javier Castellano. Flavius, another Mike Maker horse, jockeyed by Paco Lopez. March to the Arch, trained by Mark Cassie and jockeyed by Edwin Gonzalez. Hit the Road, trained by Dan Blacker and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. Colonel Liam, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Doswell, trained by Barkley Tagg and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. Sacred Life, the French horse, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Field Pass, another Mike Maker horse, jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Channel Cat, trained by Jack Sisterson and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Cross Border, trained by Mike Maker and jockeyed by Raylu Gutierrez. And then finally, Never Surprised, also trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Louis Saez. All right. Well, this is a really solid field, and there should be a very solid pace to go along with this field. So that always opens things up and makes things more exciting, I think, for turf races to get that hot pace up front. We're not going to hit every single horse in this race, but it's interesting. I think you look at a horse like Doswell, I think you look at a horse like Channel Cat, there are some questions about whether or not those two horses that like to kind of get on the lead. Doswell did it last time. Channel Cat's going to try to do it again here. Never Surprised is a horse that's probably going to push for the lead as well. I don't think they're going to be able to slow the pace down as much as they did last time out. Channel Cat did that last time out up at Aqueduct, really was able to slow the pace down, hold on for a very, very close second. Doswell did that last time at Gulfstream, was able to really slow the pace down up front and was able to kick for home and actually win the Fort Lauderdale. So this is, or the Suwannee, I should say. So this is a horse I just really like a lot. But I just think this field doesn't necessarily set up great for those two, because I think there's a fair amount of pace. Like I said, Never Surprised should press a little bit. This is a horse that's pretty lightly paced with increasing speed figures. Now, that usually is my type of horse, but this is a massive step up in class. And this is a horse that was defeated by a horse like Public Sector, who is a good horse, but not a great horse. And so I just, if Public Sector were in this race, I wouldn't love Public Sector in this spot. This is a horse that loses to Public Sector routinely. So I don't know why I would like Never Surprised in this spot. So I'm kind of fading Never Surprised a little bit here in this particular race, even though it's 7-2 and you have the outside post position. But I do think this is a horse that has some question marks. Like I said, I think is taking that step up in class and in this large of a field with a lot of early speed, just have some questions there. Let's talk a little bit about Space Traveler. Love Space Traveler. I hate the inside rail, but I love a lot of other things about this horse. Getting blinkers. So this is a horse that actually should be more forwardly placed. I think this is a horse that might be right behind that early speed of Channel Cat and Doswell and Never Surprised. And so I think sitting fourth or fifth in this field isn't the worst thing. You're going to have an inside trip, so you're going to have a little bit of ground saving effort there. Like I said, the blinkers should keep this horse engaged. This horse doesn't always show a great kick, but, again, the blinkers should help. Like I said, the inside post position should be there. If there's a hotter pace up front, I think you're going to see a little bit more of that kick come through. So there's a lot to like there with Space Traveler, particularly at that cost. I think at that price, we'll see what you get by post time, but I like Space Traveler there. Hit the Road. This is a horse I absolutely love. Anybody who watched my preview of Santa Anita about a month ago, when Hit the Road and Sacred Life ran against each other, know that I picked Hit the Road. My dad picked Sacred Life. I really liked Hit the Road in that race. So I like this horse a lot. Don't like the horse in this spot. Has never gone this long before and is going up against the best competition of its career. So that combination is not great. This horse also rarely ever leaves the West Coast. The one time it went to Keeneland, it finished fifth in a Grade 1. So I just have some questions there. And the form is very good, but I just think Hit the Road's a horse that, like I said, have a couple of questions about there. And I'm not quite sure how this horse is ultimately going to play out in this race. Like I said, that new distance is a little bit of a question mark here, particularly behind this pace. So let's talk about the reigning champion, Colonel Liam, going off a 3-1, the morning line favorite. This is a horse that has not raced since June. At its best, he is better than everybody else in the field. No doubt about it. This is a horse, tons of Grade 1 experience, has run in some of the biggest races for turf in the country, knows how to win, and has won at this level in the past. And won at this track in the past. Everything to like about this. Colonel Liam's is a great horse. You got Todd Pletcher, who, if you're paying attention, is winning everything at Gulfstream Park. I think he's winning 43% of his entries at Gulfstream. So he's just killing things there. That said, lack of running since June is a question mark. Horses coming off that long of a layoff, you just worry about. So there's a lot to like with Colonel Liam. But I'm kind of fading this horse a little bit. The last effort out before that wasn't great. Obviously, that's part of the reason the horse had a long layoff then. But I just think coming off the long layoff, this is a field with a lot of horses that are in really good shape. That's the thing, is a lot of these horses that are running here are firing. These are horses that are running their best form recently. So Colonel Liam's not kind of slipping into something where this is an easy spot to kind of drop into. This is a pretty legit race to drop into with a lot of horses that are showing a lot of class recently. So I'm a little concerned about Colonel Liam in that regard. Already talked about Doswell. Really like this horse, but I don't think he'll be able to control the pace up front. So kind of fading Doswell a little bit in this particular race. The horses that I really like, aside from Space Traveler, I really like Sacred Life. This is my pick to win. I think this race sets up perfectly for Sacred Life. Also, listen, picking Chad Brown on the turf is not exactly, rocket science, but still 6-1 morning line odds. I just think this pace sets up perfectly. This is a horse with a great late kick. Jose Ortiz has shown the ability to give some great turf rides over the years. So I think the combination of jockey, trainer, and horse, style, pace, all sets up really well for Sacred Life. The other horse I do like a lot for value is a Tone. I liked a Tone a couple of, the last race out at a huge price, and he came in second. Again, a Tone's coming out at a huge price, 20-1. I like this horse underneath. I think you're going to get a lot of value here. I think, again, this horse will sit behind that hot pace, and I think will then make a really strong run. The question with the Tone is, does a Tone get shuffled too far back? If it doesn't get too far back, then I think he's got a real shot. So ultimately, how do I see the Grade 1 Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational playing out? I have Sacred Life to win, Space Traveler to place, and a Tone to show. All right. Well, let's get to the headliner, the Grade 1 Pegasus World Cup, 1.125 miles, 4-year-olds and up, on dirt. It's a 9-horse field, and let's go. And so let's talk about this field. So post position 1, speaking of let's go, you got Knicks go. Brad Cox trained, Joel Rosario jockeyed, the morning line favorite at 6-5. This will be his final race, the current reigning Breeders' Cup Classic champion. In post position 2, Chess Chief, trained by Dallas Stewart, jockeyed by Raylu Gutierrez. In post position 3, Stiletto Boy, trained by Ed Mosier Jr. and jockeyed by Kent DeSormo. And then you have the big competition in Knicks go, Life is Good, the Todd Pletcher horse, trained by Irad Ortiz Jr. Empty Tomb, trained by Robert Falcone Jr. and jockeyed by Paco Lopez. Sir Winston, trained by Mark Cassie and jockeyed by Edwin Gonzalez. Title Ready, trained by Dallas Stewart and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. Endorsed, trained by Mike Maker and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. And then finally Commandeer, trained by James Toner and jockeyed by Julian Leparoux. All right. I'll be honest, I've been, doing these shows for several months now. I started doing the Win Play show back for the run for the Triple Crown in 2021. I always make notes. I have notes that I use when I'm recording this, and I don't lose my place, and I know which horses I want to talk about, things like that. There has never been a race that has fewer notes than this race right here, because this just comes down to who you got. Knicks go, Life is Good. Knicks go blew away everybody at 1.25 miles at the Breeders' Cup. Life is Good blew away everybody at the Breeders' Cup at 1 mile. Now they meet in the middle at 1.125 miles. All right, let's see. What do you got? And this is one where it's the style. That's what makes this race so damn exciting, is these are two horses that refuse not to get to the lead. These are two horses that run as fast as they possibly can for as long as they possibly can and simply wear their competition into the ground because of it. They both want to get to the lead, and one of them isn't going to do it. I highly doubt they're going to sit right next to each other the entire way around. Maybe they will. Maybe it will be affirmed in Aladar. And if it is, my God, what a treat for the rest of us, because this should be a spectacle. And I know people, sometimes are down on Gulfstream Park. People kind of said, oh, Pegasus week. It's not, it's not really a Pegasus week. It's just Pegasus day. I don't care. This is the most excited I've been for a race all year, going back all calendar year. This is great. And Knicks Go has answered every question. He, answered the question about distance, going up to 1.25 miles, winning that Breeders' Cup, and just showing so much class in that race. I mean, just so easily dispatching the other horses in the field. Life is Good, coming off that long layoff, goes out and runs a very close second to probably the best sprinter in the entire country, and then comes back and dominates people at the Kelso, and then just obliterates the field at the dirt mile at the Breeders' Cup, and just blows away everybody else. Ginobili 8 rings, the whole 9 yards. It's important to point out, Life is Good was the horse this year. That was the horse in 2021. This was the horse that was going to be the Triple Crown favorite. This was the horse that was supposed to be the Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont winner. This was the horse. This was a horse that absolutely obliterated Medina Spirit in multiple races early in their careers. And this was the horse that was responsible for me to question the late Medina Spirit early on, because I sat there and go, yeah, how good can Medina Spirit be if he's getting beat by 8 lengths? Well, turns out pretty damn good. And that should tell you everything you need to know about Life is Good. I understand people going, whose Life is Good really run against? I get that. Speed is speed, though. This horse has it. And so does Knicks Go. Now, here's the thing. If one of them, ends up getting to the lead, I think Life is Good is more capable of winning. I think if Knicks Go gets second and doesn't get that lead, I think it's devastating. I also think if Knicks Go just ends up getting into a sprint, as he did with Charlatan at the Met Mile, I think that's a problem. Life is Good, by all accounts, looks amazing. Knicks Go, by all accounts, looks amazing. And these two horses are primed for a great effort. This is Knicks Go's final race before retirement. Life is Good's got a lot of races to go. Todd Pletcher is the best in the business and is just crushing things down at Gulfstream, like I mentioned. I think Knicks Go, I actually think, and this is interesting, a lot of people have talked about, well, Knicks Go on the rail. If you go on social media, half the people, all of whom I respect, a lot of really smart people, half the people will say, the rail, that's just going to really crush Knicks Go. The other half of the people go, man, what a great draw. Get that inside rail. So, it's in the eye of the beholder. I tend to be a little bit more agnostic. I mean, Knicks Go's got the speed where I don't think the inside rail matters. Life is Good has got the speed. I don't think drawing to the outside. I actually think drawing to the outside is beneficial. I really like Life is Good in this race. I think this is a passing of the baton. I absolutely love Knicks Go. And this is a horse that's really grown on me over the last few months. And because I was initially skeptical, but really grown on me. I just think Life is Good is going to be super aggressive, super fast. I think Life is Good is just going to get out to that lead. I think he's just a little bit faster up front. And I think if he gets to that lead, Knicks Go running second, there's just not a great track record there. And so I have Life is Good to win. There's not a lot of analysis in this one. This is one, who the top 2 are. Now, if you're sitting there going, I think these 2 are going to run themselves into the ground and somebody's going to come up and win, maybe. I mean, somebody like Ken Rudolph on TVG, I mean, I love Ken. Ken's always looking for a long shot. And that's certainly his kind of perspective, which is to say these 2 are going to wear themselves out up front and nobody else is going to be able to catch them. Or somebody else is going to be able to catch them. Here's the thing. I just think these 2 are better than everybody else. And I think they could be running in quicksand down the stretch and still be ahead of everybody else. Now, I know everybody's going to look at Sir Winston as the horse that could do it. It's got a good late kick. That said, you take this horse out of Woodbine, you look at this horse's last few dirt efforts, I don't know. I mean, I'm not as high on Sir Winston maybe as everybody else. The horse that I would look at, both underneath and if you think these 2 are going to run themselves into the ground, I would look at Stiletto Boy. That's the horse that I actually have a little bit of confidence in. I think Stiletto Boy is going to sit back a little bit further, but not too far back. And Stiletto Boy just has this amazing knack of finishing on the board really far back. And so, we did it to Flightline a few races ago, finished third behind Flightline and Baby Yoda. But this is a horse that just manages to hit the board even while getting blown out. And, has run, second sometimes behind the late Medina Spirit. Might be a few lengths, but was always right there. I really like Stiletto Boy. 20-1 morning line. That's the horse that I would go and play underneath. You're not going to get a ton of value with those 2 up top, But if you think those two are going to collapse, I really do think Stiletto Boy's the next obvious choice. But I don't think those two are going to collapse. It's just that simple. I think they're just the class. I think they could sprint each other. I hope to God it's like Affirmed and Aladar, and I hope it's just must-see TV. So who do I have? Well, like I said, I got Life is Good to win. I think we're going to see a very, very special horse, and I'm very excited to see. I got Knicks Go to Place. I just think this horse is too good not to finish second. And I also sentimentally like this horse. And I hope this horse runs well in its final race, because it's always great to see a champion go out on a really strong term. And then I do have Stiletto Boy to show. Okay, well, that was a lot, but that was 7 races. So I hope you enjoyed today's preview. And remember, for more thoughts on the entire card, head over to amalfimedia.com, where I have my win, place, and show picks for the entire Saturday card ahead of the $40,000 stable duel contest on Gulfstream. And while you're there, check out all of the horse racing content that we have at Amalfi Media and the Win Place Show podcast, like our weekly race recaps, our weekly horse racing news episodes, frequent interviews with figures from across the industry, and of course, our weekly Friday stakes previews. Finally, just a reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Place Show on the podcast platform of your choice. Of course, subscribe to the Win Place Show on YouTube, in addition to following me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace for all the great horse racing content you need to get ready for the 2022 run for the Triple Crown. Well, until next time, friends, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you that it's now post time.